the almighty realm of K-pop. That glorious combination of catchy addictive melodies, slick choreography, style, top-notch music videos and an endless parade of attractive South Korean performers. Blend together as if it was an Asian, millennial version of a Great Gatsby's party. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last 10 years, you have probably heard at least one K-pop tune on the radio. Does BTS, Blackpink or Red Velvet ring a bell? If that sounds like different types of fabric to you, then why don't you ask your past 2012 self?
Oppan Gangnam Style.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But wait, this isn't 2012 anymore. Here you go. Does it mean that K-pop has lost its spark now? Well, it is kind of the opposite. As it was a non-stop snowball that grows bigger and bigger each year, the K-pop industry is now a monster of international entertainment, appealing to large groups of youngsters regardless of their nationality. Today, the whole K-pop phenomenon is far from being just a trend limited to the music. The Korean wave, aka Hallyu, has become a major driver of global culture. Seen in everything from Korean dramas on Netflix, to Korean skincare regimens dominating the cosmetics industry, to delicious Korean tacos on your favorite local menu. So yeah, K-pop has become one of the fastest growing music genre worldwide, in the past 10 to 5 years, with some serious impact on Korea's economy. The Hallyu effect has been tremendous. In 2004 alone, it contributed 0.2% of Korea's GDP with a stunning $1.87 billion. In 1965, Korea's GDP per capita was less than Ghana. Today, South Korea is the world's 12th largest economy. With a ravenous fan base, big hits and even bigger idols, K-pop is alive and kicking. But how did this happen? How could one small nation in a small Asian peninsula come to dominate the music landscape globally? Well, welcome to Small World. And this is the story of how K-pop dominated the globe. It is 1992. Batman Returns is on at the movie theaters. Kids are stressing out about not letting their Tamagotchi die. Bill Clinton was just elected as president, and Americans are in their faded jeans, bobbing to the sounds of "I'm too sexy for my shirt."
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy. Yeah.
Simpler times indeed. But halfway across the globe, 3 young Korean boys, former members of the hair metal band Sinaway, are about to make history. They just don't know it yet. Yes, believe it or not, those guys put the first stone on the K-pop temple. So anyways, after a 360 degrees turn in their music style, these guys are now performing in a live television talent contest. Their sound is new, Korean lyrics, Europop, African-American hip-hop and rap. They dance in sync and the studio audience goes wild. The judges in their prim suits are less impressed. They reveal their scorecards. The band gets the lowest mark of the night and is voted off the show. The judges couldn't have got it more wrong. In the next few days, the song, I Know, climbs to the top of the charts, and stays there for a record-smashing 17 weeks. Seo Taiji and Boys ignites a revolution. Korean pop, or K-pop, was born. Over the next 2 decades, it would just gain traction, hone its style, build a die-hard fan base on Korean soil before spilling out into the rest of the world. So, before moving on, let's get clear with some stuff. What exactly is K-pop? I know. Sounds kind of dumb, and formally yes, it refers to Korean popular music. However, if you ask about how K-pop sound, well, now is where the rocky road begins. It is really hard to encapsulate K-pop as one specific genre, since it is influenced by a bunch of different styles from all around the world, such as experimental, rock, jazz, gospel, hip-hop, R&B, reggae, electronic dance, folk, country, and classical, on top of its traditional Korean music roots. And those are just the ones that Wikipedia mentions. If we can't rely on the style, maybe the language? Once again, not that simple. K-pop music is most commonly sung in Korean, but not necessarily. The international breakthrough of K-pop was thanks to its multilingual flexibility. Lots of K-pop hits are usually released in a bunch of different languages, those depending on the most appealing markets in each case, so you can easily find K-pop songs in Korean, Japanese, Chinese, English for the Western world, or even a combination of languages in a single song. Crazy, right? Well, this is just getting started. I'm just so proud to live in an age where we can see an ethnically Korean boy band perform in an English-spoken city like New York and sing in Spanish. the geographical point of view in this matter is also not enough to define K-pop, if we keep in mind that lots of K-pop artists come from different nations, like Malaysia, China, the Philippines, Japan and even Mexico? So what makes K-pop unique? And let's say distinctive from American pop music? We can pretty much identify K-pop by its high production values and its carefully crafted aesthetic, but if that's not enough, we can always rely on the most characteristic aspect of K-pop music: its idols. First off, let's take care of the elephant in the room. This whole girls and boys band logic in Western pop music is practically dead. I mean, it seems like such a corny, outdated idea. Bands like the Backstreet Boys and the Spice Girls were huge on their time, and those bands were precisely the ones that influenced K-pop pioneers, like CO Taiji and Boys. But the whole boy-girl band thing has lost relevance in the West with the time. Of course, there are a few exceptions like One Direction, who managed to keep the boy band formation fresh on recent years, but it is far from being as prominent as the solo artist model on today's pop music. South Korea, however, took the boy band model of the 90s and aged it like it was fine wine, keeping it cool, relevant and updated, as the world transformed itself, due to the internet and the social media breakthrough. South Korea proved that the more were definitely the better, and figured out the way of creating a group of up to 21 members. Even creating subdivisions within the same group in order to expand the business. Like the case of NTC, a group with 4 different divisions based on different cities. Another distinctive trait of K-pop idols is the systematic way those artists are harvested in the Korean music industry, pretty much as if they were money-making products mass-produced in a factory. I'm not exaggerating. South Korean performers spend years in grueling studio systems, learning to sing and dance in synchronized perfection at very young age. There had been cases where K-pop artists started their training when they were just 10. This had been a subject of controversy within the K-pop industry. Since K-pop training regimes are exhausting, and K-pop contracts demand an excessive amount of time and energy from artists at a very young age, when they should also develop social skills and, in general, experience their childhood and adolescence. But, why South Korea among all the nations in the world? Really? The world's largest producer of semiconductors? South Korea may seem like an unlikely contender to become a pop culture factory. But its influence in mainstream media has been steadily growing for the past 2 decades. And today it is rivaling not only the biggest American music studios, but Hollywood itself. Think about it, in 2020, a relatively unknown South Korean filmmaker beat out Scorsese, Tarantino, Todd Phillips and Sam Mendes in the Academy Awards. How did this all happen? What makes this country so special? Well, there are actually several factors that allowed South Korea to build the beautiful miracle of K-pop. K-pop as we know it wouldn't exist without democracy and television. Specifically, South Korea's reformation of its democratic government in 1987, with its accompanying modernization and lightening of censorship. Before that, there were only 2 broadcast networks in the country, and they largely controlled what music South Koreans listened to. Singers and musicians weren't much more than tools of the networks. Networks introduced the public to musical stars, primarily through weekend music talent shows. Radio existed but, like the TV networks, was under tight state control. Independent music production didn't really exist, and rock music was controversial and subject to banning. I Know, by CO Taiji and Boys, represented the first time modern American-style pop music had been fused with South Korean culture. CO Taiji and Boys were innovators, who challenged norms around musical styles, song topics, fashion, and censorship. They sang about teen angst and the social pressure to succeed within a grueling education system, and insisted on creating their own music, and writing their own songs outside of the manufactured network environment. Unfortunately, CO Taiji and Boys officially disbanded in 1996, but they had changed South Korea's musical and performance landscape, paving the way for other artists to be even more experimental and break even more boundaries. The first idol group in South Korea appeared on the scene in 1996, when SM founder Lee Soo-man created a group called HOT, by assembling 5 singers and dancers who represented what he believed teens wanted to see from a modern pop group. Korean pop idols started to become famous in Asian countries in 2003. Singers like BoA and the boy band TVXQ became the first K-pop idols to successfully break into the Japanese market. How? By taking down the language barrier. With the support of the South Korean government, who saw the industry's economic potential, the so-called Korean wave started to spread even further, and K-pop gained a global audience. South Korean artists have hit the Billboard Hot 100 chart at least 8 times, since the Wonder Girls first cracked it in 2009, with their crossover hit, Nobody. Released in 4 different languages, including English. And the export of K-pop has ballooned South Korea's music industry to an impressive $5 billion industry. And, as you might expect, the more K-pop has become more successful, the more the establishment has become interested. The government started to back the music industry, giving it tax breaks. They gave money to academics to enhance the popularity of the genre, and to incorporate the K-pop training camps in the education system. It worked and brought in big business. But that wasn't all. The impact was, not only in terms of money, but in terms of its popularity and expanding the South Korean influence of soft power abroad. And K-pop became central to lots of other profitable industries like the fashion and beauty business, and the rest is just history. K-pop became a phenomenon that grew like in snowball. Korean pop music first cracked the US in 2012, with PSY's Gangnam Style. Now the train had definitely left the station. K-pop exploded in a global scale, a supercharged beat paired with outrageously stylized visuals. But most K-pop fanatics today see that song as a one-off gimmick. Gangnam Style was an anomaly. The dynamics were internet meme-driven, like, oh, look at this. For 5 years, Gangnam Style held the top spot on YouTube, the first video ever to surpass 1 billion views. This was a historic moment for Korean pop, with the whole world now captivated, proving lyrics didn't have to be understood for a song to be enjoyed. While it's true that Gangnam Style was more of a gimmick song in the world of K-pop, it opened up eyes, and a fandom was born. People around the world began streaming K-pop in quantities unseen before, with YouTube's view counts reaching dizzying heights literally overnight. These popular videos were now trending on everyone's YouTube homepage, and the Korean wave had now reached the entire world, just like that. Where would K-pop be without the internet? In the last few years, fandoms have rapidly grown across the globe, with almost every K-pop group now having their own special set of followers, keen to push their favorite artist to the #1 top spot on web streaming platforms, and break records left, right, and center. BTS, one of Korea's most popular boy bands, released their single, Boy With Love, to overnight success. It became the most viewed music video in the first 24 hours of release. Just days after, Blackpink, a Korean girl group, had done the same with their single, Kill This Love. K-pop had finally made the charts in the US, the UK, France, and Australia, and was here to stay, thanks to killer visuals, catchy earworm singles, and dance routines that just beg to be copied, even if you have 2 left feet. As a result of the Korean wave, Korean is fast growing in popularity as a language. A study in the US from the Modern Language Association showed that the number of students signing up for university Korean courses was up 14% just in 3 years. The tourism sector also skyrocketed. Thousands now flock to the country to learn more of the language, experience Korean culture, and dance to K-pop hits in the country where it all began. Nowadays, the influence of K-pop outside South Korea is enormous. K-pop fanbase all across the globe highlight, not only for their embracing nature towards Hallyu, but also their active role in society, while showing their devotion to their idols. This cultural expression can change the political environment of Korea for good. Western music once helped tear a hole in the Iron Curtain. Soviet youths listened to illicit recordings of the Beatles, and in 1987, young East Berliners gathered near the wall to hear David Bowie's emotional performance of Heroes, at the divided city's west side. Now, there is evidence that South Korean K-pop is playing a similar role in subtly undermining the propaganda of the North Korean regime, with rising numbers of defectors citing music as one factor in their disillusionment with their government. Right now, K-pop music can pretty much be a symbol just as what happened in South American countries like Chile and Argentina during the 70s and 80s. By that time, those countries were under the influence of heavy authoritarian governments, who practically banned all revolutionary cultural expressions like US rock music. This actually originated a cultural boom between young people, who created their own version of rock music in their own language. A similar situation took place in South Africa, where the music of the American-born artist Sixto Rodriguez became a symbol of protest, and one of the first countercultural movements to face the apartheid and the racial segregation in the country. If we have to choose one cultural expression that brings people together, very few can compete with music. K-pop music growth over the past couple of years is telling us that K-pop is not slowing down anytime soon. Only time will tell what changes will bring K-pop to our future. But, since K-pop has become a huge device to bring people from all nations together, we might be expecting a bright future. I've been Thomas and this has been Small World. I'll see you on the next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe for cool content every week.